My father said, "Sit there. This isn't your place anymore." Everyone watched. No one spoke. I nodded and sat down. The chair he pointed to was at the far end of the table, past the grandkids' booster seats, next to the kitchen door where the draft came through. 23 years I'd sat at the head of that table during family gatherings. 23 years of carving the turkey, pouring the wine, making the toasts that nobody really listened to but everybody expected. Now I was sitting next to the recycling bin. My son Alex didn't look at me. He took the head seat like he'd been practicing the movement, smooth, confident. His wife Jennifer touched his shoulder as she passed, a gesture of ownership. Their twins, 8 years old, watched the whole thing with those flat, unreadable expressions kids get when adults are doing something they don't understand but know is important. My wife Ellen sat across from me, 3 seats down. She met my eyes for exactly 1 second. Then she looked at her plate. I could have said something. Could have asked what the hell this was about. Why everyone was acting like I'd done something wrong. Why my own father was reassigning me like a piece of furniture. But I knew better. When you've spent 30 years as a structural safety consultant, you learn to recognize when a system is already compromised. You don't start asking questions during the collapse. You document. You observe. You wait for the pattern to reveal itself. So I sat there and ate my dinner and listened to Alex talk about his latest project. Some high-rise residential complex on the north side. Jennifer kept interrupting with little corrections about timeline and budget. My father nodded along like Alex was describing the cure for cancer. "The foundation inspection went perfectly," Alex said. "We're ahead of schedule." I cut my chicken, chewed, swallowed. I knew that building. I'd done the preliminary site assessment 2 years ago. The soil composition was marginal at best. You could build there, sure, but you'd need deep pilings and continuous monitoring. Expensive, time-consuming, the kind of thing that makes developers nervous and contractors creative. "That's impressive," my father said. "Real impressive." Ellen pushed food around her plate. Jennifer refilled wine glasses. The twins asked to be excused and nobody answered them. After dinner, my father took Alex into the study. Their voices were low but not quiet enough. I heard phrases like transition of responsibility and family legacy and moving forward. Jennifer stayed in the dining room, clearing plates with Ellen. They talked about school districts and vacation plans, normal things, surface things. I went to the bathroom and stood there looking at my reflection. 51 years old. Gray in the beard, but not the hair yet. Still in decent shape. Still sharp. I looked like someone who had his shit together. The man in the mirror looked back at me like he knew better. When I came out, everyone was gathering coats and saying goodbyes. Alex shook my hand. Firm grip. Eye contact. "Thanks for coming, Dad." Like I was a guest. Like this was his house. It was his house. Had been for 6 months now. They'd moved in to help with maintenance after my father's hip surgery. Temporary arrangement, everyone said, just until he was back on his feet. My father was playing golf 3 times a week now. I drove home alone. Ellen had ridden with Jennifer and Alex, something about picking up groceries together afterward. Our house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. 42 years old, that house. I'd inspected it myself before we bought it. Good bones, solid foundation, the kind of place that lasts. Inside, I didn't turn on the lights. I went straight to my office, the spare bedroom where I kept my files and laptop and the boxes Ellen always complained about. "Why do you need to keep all this?" she'd ask. "It's just taking up space." I'd never had a good answer for that. Some instinct, maybe. The same instinct that made me photograph job sites from 3 different angles, keep copies of every email, record my phone conversations when state law allowed it. The file cabinet was in the closet, behind the winter coats. Not hidden exactly, just not obvious. I pulled out the bottom drawer and removed the false bottom I'd installed myself. Underneath were 3 folders: red, yellow, green. Green was property records and financial documents, nothing exciting, nothing useful. Yellow was correspondence, emails, letters, text message screenshots, organized by date and person. Alex, Jennifer, my father, Ellen, other family members, business contacts, going back years. Red was everything else, the things I'd noticed but never mentioned, the patterns I'd documented because that's what I do. I see problems before they happen. That's my job, that's my training, that's my curse. I opened the red folder. The first document was a safety inspection report from 18 months ago. Commercial building, 8 stories, mixed-use development. Alex had been the project manager. I'd done the structural assessment as a favor to the general contractor, an old friend who wanted a second opinion before signing off. The foundation was compromised, not catastrophically, but enough to require remediation. Expensive remediation, the kind that could delay a project by 3 months and add $500,000 to the budget. I'd submitted my report. Detailed findings, clear recommendations. The contractor had thanked me and said he'd handle it. 2 months later, the building passed final inspection. No remediation done. I'd checked. I'd gone to the site personally and taken photographs of the foundation markers I'd placed during my initial assessment. Same settling patterns, same stress indicators. Nothing had been fixed. I'd asked my contractor friend about it. He'd been evasive, said something about revised projections and acceptable risk tolerance. Then he'd stopped returning my calls. The building was occupied now. 56 residential units, ground floor retail, hundreds of people living and working on top of a foundation I'd flagged as inadequate. I flipped through the folder, more reports, more projects, a pattern emerging like a photograph in developing fluid. Alex's name appeared in connection with 7 different buildings over the past 3 years. I'd been involved in the early assessment stages of 5 of them. All 5 had issues, not deal breakers, but significant concerns that required attention and money. None of the issues had been properly addressed. All 5 buildings had passed final inspection. I pulled up the email folder and started cross-referencing dates. 2 weeks after each of my reports, there would be an email exchange between Alex and Jennifer. Vague language. Resolved the situation. Found a better approach. Doesn't make sense to overthink it. Then there were the emails to my father. Subject lines like Dad's concerns and handling the usual paranoia and need to have a conversation about boundaries. The usual paranoia. I'd been raising questions about structural integrity, about safety protocols, about cutting corners and acceptable risk, and my son had been dismissing it as paranoia, to my father, to his wife, to anyone who would listen. I sat back in my chair. The house was completely silent. No traffic noise from outside, no creaking of settling wood, just the hum of my laptop fan and my own breathing. 23 years I'd sat at the head of that table. Now I knew why I'd been moved. I opened my email and started drafting a message to my contractor friend. Polite, professional. Just checking in on those old projects. How were they holding up? Any issues with settling or structural movement? Then I deleted it. Too obvious, too direct. If Alex had been talking about my paranoia, then reaching out to old contacts would just confirm their narrative. The crazy father who can't let go. The retired consultant who doesn't understand how modern construction works. Retired. That was another thing. I hadn't retired. I'd reduced my client load, sure, but I was still licensed and active. Still took jobs, still maintained my certifications, but in the family narrative, I was retired. Past tense. Former career. Old man who used to do important work. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopped at a name I hadn't called in 5 years. Bill Hendricks, city building inspector. We'd worked together on a dozen projects back in the day. Good guy, thorough, gave a shit about doing things right. I sent him a text. Hey Bill, long time. Any chance you're still with the city? Got a question about inspection protocols. The response came back in 3 minutes. Still here, still fighting the good fight. Call me tomorrow, lunch is good. I put the phone down and looked at the red folder again. There was more in there. So much more. Voice recordings from arguments with Alex about shortcuts and safety margins. Photographs of construction sites with timestamps and GPS data. Copies of permits and inspection certificates with notes about discrepancies I'd noticed. And at the very back, something I hadn't put there myself. A flash drive. I pulled it out and turned it over in my hands. No label. Standard 32 GB capacity. I didn't recognize it. Had no idea where it came from or when it had appeared in my files. I plugged it into my laptop. One folder, one subfolder, 17 audio files. I clicked on the first one. Jennifer's voice came through my speakers, clear as if she were sitting next to me. He's going to be a problem. You know that, right? Alex's voice. Younger, maybe 3 years ago. He's my dad. He's just protective. He's paranoid and controlling, and he's going to tank your reputation if people keep hearing his doomsday bullshit. Jen, come on. I'm serious, Alex. You need to establish boundaries. Real boundaries. Not, I'll talk to him boundaries. Not, he means well boundaries. You need to cut him out of the professional loop completely. Silence. Then Alex, quieter. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you start making it clear to people that his opinions don't represent your work, that his old school approach doesn't apply anymore, that he's retired. He's not retired. Then make him retired. In people's minds, in the industry. He doesn't get to be your co-signer anymore. Another silence. Longer this time. Then Alex. Okay. Just like that. One word. Okay. I sat there staring at the media player. The timestamp on the file was April 17th, 3 years ago. 2 months before Alex had started distancing himself from me professionally. 3 months before the first building with unresolved issues had passed inspection. I clicked on the second file. My father's voice this time. In his study, probably. The boy needs space to grow. You hovering over every decision isn't helping. Alex. I know, Grandpa. I know I'm trying to handle it. She's right, you know. Jennifer. About establishing yourself separately. You've got the skills. You've got the education. You don't need him second-guessing everything. But what if he's right? What if there really are problems I'm missing? My father laughed. Actually laughed. Son, in this business, there are always problems, always concerns, always one more thing to check. Your dad's problem is he never learned when to stop checking. He never learned that sometimes good enough is good enough. That's not what he taught me. That's because he's too careful, too risk-averse. It's kept him small his whole career. You don't want that. You want to build. You want to grow. You want to make a real impact. Silence again. Then my father. Trust your wife. She's got a good head for business, better than he ever did. The file ended. I closed the laptop, stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the street was empty, porch lights glowing, normal suburban night, the kind of scene that looks peaceful from a distance. Up close, you can always see the cracks. I knew who'd put that flash drive in my files. Only one person had access to this room besides me. Only one person who moved quietly enough that I might not notice. Ellen. My wife had been documenting the same things I had, but she'd been documenting the conversations I wasn't part of, the private moments when people said what they really thought. She'd been protecting me, or maybe protecting herself, or maybe just preparing for the inevitable moment when everything would have to be exposed. I heard the front door open downstairs, Ellen's footsteps in the hallway. She called up, "I'm home." I didn't answer right away. I stood there at the window, looking out at the dark street, holding a flash drive full of my family's betrayal. Finally, I called back, "I'm up here." Her footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate. She appeared in the doorway of the office, saw the open file cabinet, saw the red folder on the desk, saw the flash drive in my hand. "You found it," she said. Not a question. "You put it there." She nodded, came into the room, sat down in the chair across from my desk. 3 months ago, I wasn't sure you'd look, wasn't sure you'd need to. Tonight made it necessary. I figured it would. I held up the flash drive. Where did these come from? Voice recorder app on my phone. Started using it a year ago, after I noticed things were changing. You recorded my father? I recorded everyone. Whenever I felt like something important was happening, something you needed to hear. I sat down, looked at her, really looked at her. Ellen was 50 years old. We'd been married 28 years. I thought I knew her expressions, thought I could read her moods and motivations. The woman sitting across from me was someone I'd missed entirely. There are 17 files on here, I said. That's all the ones that mattered. How many did you record total? She smiled. Sad smile. Tired smile. 132. Jesus. Why didn't you tell me? Because you still loved them. All of them. You still thought this was salvageable, that it was just some misunderstanding or communication problem. She leaned forward. I knew better. I saw what was happening. But I couldn't just tell you. You'd have defended them, made excuses, found reasons to believe the best. She was right. I would have. So you documented everything. Just like you taught me. See the problem, record the evidence, wait for the pattern to reveal itself. I looked at the flash drive again. And tonight? Tonight was the culmination, the moment when they didn't even bother hiding it anymore, when they made it official and public. She stood up, walked to the window where I'd been standing. Now you have everything you need. Everything I need for what? She turned and looked at me. Her eyes were clear. No tears, no anger, just cold assessment. To stop being the victim, she said, and start being the problem they should have worried about. That night, I opened a file I had promised never to use, but I wasn't the only one keeping records, and I wasn't the only one who'd reached the end of patience. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office and went through all 17 audio files. Then I cross-referenced them with my own documentation. Dates, locations, context. Building the timeline the way I'd build a structural analysis, layer by layer, component by component, looking for the load-bearing elements and the points of failure. By morning, I had a picture. It wasn't just about me being pushed out. That was personal, sure, but it was also strategic. Alex needed distance from my professional reputation. My questions about safety protocols were becoming obstacles to his advancement, and Jennifer had recognized that before he did. The real revelation was how systematically it had been done, how many conversations had happened without me, how many decisions had been made about my role in the family, my access to information, my input on projects, all of it coordinated, all of it deliberate. Ellen made coffee around 6, brought me a cup without saying anything. Just set it on the desk and stood there. Did you listen to all of them? She asked. Yes. Then you understand. I looked up at her. Help me understand why you stayed quiet. She sat down, wrapped both hands around her own coffee cup. Because I was waiting to see if you'd fight back on your own, if you'd notice what was happening and defend yourself. And when I didn't? Then I knew I needed to give you proof. Not just my interpretation, not just what I thought I was seeing. Hard evidence that even you couldn't rationalize away. She was treating me like a client, like someone who needed convincing before they'd acknowledge a structural problem. Maybe that's what I'd become. Someone so invested in believing the building was sound that I ignored the obvious signs of failure. I'm sorry, I said. For what? For making you carry this alone. Ellen shook her head. You didn't make me do anything. I chose to document it because I knew we'd need it eventually. I just didn't know when. She sipped her coffee. Now we know. What do you want me to do with it? That's up to you. But I can tell you what I want. What? I want them to understand what they did. Really understand. Not just feel bad about it later or make excuses. I want consequences. Her voice was steady. No drama, just statement of intent. and I want you to stop protecting them from yourself." We sat there in silence. Outside, the morning traffic was picking up. People heading to work. Normal Tuesday. Normal lives. I pulled up my phone and sent the text to Bill Hendricks I'd drafted the night before. "Lunch today? Need to pick your brain about inspection protocols." The response came back almost immediately. "Noon work? Usual place? See you there." Ellen watched me. "The city inspector?" "Yeah, that's a start." She stood up. "I'm going to shower, then I'm calling Jennifer." "Why?" "Because she asked me to go to lunch with her and some friends. Some new social group she's trying to get me involved with." Ellen smiled. Not warmth. Something else. "I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to start paying very close attention to everything she says." After she left, I opened my laptop and started going through the yellow folder again, the correspondence, looking for patterns I'd missed before. There it was. Every time I'd raised a concern about one of Alex's projects, there would be a flurry of emails, not directly addressing my concerns, just people talking around them, reframing, repositioning, making it about me instead of about the actual structural issues. He's always been overly cautious. Risk-averse to a fault. Doesn't understand modern construction methods. Still thinking in terms of 1990 standards. A coordinated campaign. Not blatant enough to call defamatory. Just subtle enough to plant doubt. I pulled up the roster for the State Structural Safety Board. I'd let my board position lapse 3 years ago. Too busy, too tired of the politics. But I still knew half the members personally. Good people. People who cared about actual safety, not just checking boxes. I drafted an email to the board chair. Casual. Just reconnecting. Wondering if there were any openings for consultants on the upcoming review panel. The one that evaluated certification standards and investigated complaints. I didn't send it yet. Just saved it as a draft. Then I opened a mapping program and pulled up the locations of the 5 buildings I'd identified in Alex's portfolio. The ones with unresolved issues, spread across the city, different neighborhoods, different developers, but all within a 3-year window, all following the same pattern. I exported the data to a spreadsheet, added columns for developer, contractor, inspector, permit date, occupancy date, started filling in the gaps with public records. My phone buzzed. Text from my father. "Need to talk about last night. Can you stop by this morning?" I stared at the message. Debated ignoring it. But that would be reactive, emotional, the opposite of what I needed to be right now. I texted back. "Have lunch plans. Can do early afternoon. 2 hours?" "That works." I put the phone down and kept working. By the time I left for lunch with Bill, I had a complete database of every building Alex had worked on in the past 3 years, cross-referenced with inspection records, permit applications, and structural assessments. 7 projects with my involvement, 12 without. Of those 7, 5 had documented concerns that appeared to be unresolved. Of the 12 without my involvement, I couldn't tell yet. Would need more information. Bill was already at the diner when I arrived. Same booth we'd always used. He stood up and shook my hand. Strong grip. Guy was probably 65 now, but looked like he could still climb scaffolding without breaking a sweat. "Good to see you," he said. "Been too long." "Yeah, it has." We sat down, ordered, made small talk about family and weather and the new downtown development that everyone had opinions about. Then Bill leaned back and looked at me with that expression I remembered, the one that meant he knew this wasn't a social call. "So what's on your mind?" he asked. Professional curiosity question, hypothetically. "Hypothetically," he repeated, grinning slightly. "If someone wanted to look into inspection records for specific buildings, public record requests, how would that work these days?" "Same as always. Fill out the form, pay the fee, wait for processing. Usually takes 2 to 3 weeks unless you mark it urgent." "And what makes something urgent?" "Safety concern, active investigation, legal requirement." He paused. Or if you know who to ask and you buy them lunch. What if the buildings have already passed final inspection? They're occupied. Everything's officially cleared. Then you'd need a specific reason to request post-occupancy review. Some evidence of ongoing issues, resident complaints, visible damage, something concrete. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photograph I'd taken 6 months ago, one of the buildings from Alex's portfolio, close-up of the foundation markers I'd placed during my initial assessment. Obvious settling. The kind that should have triggered follow-up. Bill studied the photo. When was this taken? October. Building was occupied in June. And what was the final inspection result? Passed without conditions. He handed the phone back. Who was the inspector? Randy Morrison. Bill's expression changed, just slightly, a tightening around the eyes. Randy. You know him? Everyone knows Randy. He picked up his coffee, didn't drink it, just held the cup. Good inspector. Thorough, maybe too thorough. What does that mean? Means he sometimes finds problems that other people don't want found, makes him unpopular with developers, makes his life difficult. But he passed this building. Then either he didn't see what you saw, or he had a reason not to flag it. What kind of reason? Bill set the cup down, looked at me directly. Why are you asking me this? Because I'm trying to understand how buildings with documented structural concerns are passing final inspection. Whose buildings? I got to the warehouse site at 6:45, wanted to be early, wanted to see the space before Alex arrived, reacquaint myself with the terrain. The building was 15 years old now, the conversion project Alex and I had worked on together. What had been an industrial warehouse was now mixed-use lofts and retail space. Successful development. Good bones. We'd done it right. I walked the perimeter. Morning light just starting to break. City sounds muted. The building looked solid, well-maintained. No obvious signs of stress or settlement. This was what good work looked like. What happened when you didn't cut corners. Alex's car pulled up at exactly 7. He got out. Jeans and a work jacket, looking more like the kid I remembered than the polished professional he'd become. Thanks for meeting me, he said. Sure. We stood there awkwardly, father and son, 20 feet apart, a distance that felt like miles. I wanted to apologize, Alex said, for yesterday, for how that conversation went down. It wasn't supposed to be an ambush. What was it supposed to be? A conversation about boundaries, about letting me establish my own professional identity. He stepped closer, but it came out wrong, came out confrontational. That wasn't my intent. I waited, let the silence stretch. Alex had always hated silence, would fill it with words, explanations, tell me things he didn't mean to reveal. Jennifer thinks you're planning something, he said, some kind of move against me. She's worried. What kind of move? I don't know. That's why I wanted to talk, to clear the air, to understand what's going on in your head. You could have asked me that at your grandfather's house. Not with them there. Not with Grandpa managing the conversation. I wanted it to be just us, like it used to be. He gestured at the building. Remember this project? Remember when we'd get here at dawn and work until dark? Just the two of us figuring things out? I remember. Those were good times. You taught me everything about this work, about doing it right, about never compromising on safety. And yet, here we are. Alex looked away. Here we are. Why did you ask me to meet you here, Alex, at this building specifically? Because I wanted to remind you of who I used to be, who you raised me to be. He met my eyes. I'm not the enemy, Dad. I'm not some corporate sellout who doesn't care about safety. I'm your son. I learned from you. Then show me what you learned. Explain to me how a building with documented foundation issues passes inspection without remediation. His expression hardened. Is that what this is about? The 7th Street building? That's one of them. One of them. He laughed. No humor. So you've been going around measuring my buildings, documenting, building some kind of case. I've been following up on concerns I raised during initial assessments. Without telling me, without giving me a chance to address whatever you think you're seeing. Would you have addressed it? Yes. He said it firmly, instantly. If you'd come to me directly, if you'd treated me like a professional instead of a suspect, yes, I would have looked into it. And what would you have found? That the buildings are safe, that they meet code, that your concerns are based on outdated standards and excessive caution. The 7th Street building has settled another 3/4 of an inch since occupancy. Alex hesitated. Just a fraction. Settlement within acceptable parameters. For how long? What? For how long is that settlement acceptable? Another 6 months? Another year? At what point does ongoing movement become a problem? We're monitoring it. Are you? He didn't answer. Alex, I've worked with the inspector who signed off on your projects, Randy Morrison. He told me the truth, about the pressure, about finding ways to make things work, about approving buildings that technically meet code while knowing they're compromised. Alex's face went pale. You talked to Randy? He reached out to me. Bullshit. You went to him. You're building some case against me and you went to my inspector to get him to turn. I didn't have to get him to do anything. He's been carrying this for years. He was almost grateful to finally tell someone. Alex took a step back, then another. Like physical distance would change what I was saying. You're really doing this, he said. You're actually trying to destroy my career. I'm trying to protect people living in unsafe buildings. Those buildings are not unsafe. Jesus Christ, Dad, like I'm some kind of criminal. I'm acting like you're cutting corners and hoping nothing goes wrong. I'm working within the system, within the parameters I'm given. I'm balancing safety with practicality like every engineer in this city. No, you're prioritizing speed and cost over structural integrity. There's a difference. According to you, according to your interpretation. But every inspector who signed off on my work disagrees. Every engineer who's reviewed my calculations disagrees. The only person who sees these phantom problems is you. And Randy Morrison. Randy Morrison, who you manipulated into questioning his own professional judgment. I showed him photographs, measurements, data. He recognized what he'd been avoiding seeing. Alex pulled out his phone, started typing. I need to make some calls. I need to do damage control before you torpedo my entire career with your paranoia. It's not paranoia if the problems are real. They're not real! He shouted it. Actually shouted. They're in your head. They're projections of your fear and your need to still be relevant and your inability to accept that I don't need you hovering over my shoulder anymore. I stayed calm, kept my voice level. I have documentation from 5 different buildings, all showing the same pattern, all managed by you, all passed by inspectors who've admitted to feeling pressured to approve projects quickly. Documentation that you'll take to who? The state board? The media? Your plan is to publicly accuse your own son of professional negligence? My plan is to ensure buildings are safe. By destroying me, his voice cracked. That's your solution? Destroy your son's career? Humiliate him publicly? Turn him into a cautionary tale? I looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the fear behind the anger, the desperation. This wasn't just about professional pride. This was about survival. Alex had built his entire identity around being successful, being respected, being the next generation doing it better. And I was about to take that away. You could fix this, I said quietly. You could admit there are issues. You could work with me to address them properly. You could be the guy who owns his mistakes and corrects them. That's the kind of professional who earns real respect. Is that what Jennifer thinks? Is that what Grandpa thinks? Is that what any of the developers I work with would think? He shook his head. No. They'd think I was weak. They'd think I caved to pressure from my paranoid father. They'd lose confidence in me. Then they should lose confidence in you. Alex went very still. What did you say? If your professional relationships depend on hiding problems instead of solving them, then those relationships aren't worth maintaining. Easy for you to say. You're at the end of your career. You have nothing to lose. I have everything to lose. You have people's lives in your hands, Alex. That's what you have to lose. The moral authority to call yourself an engineer, the ability to look in the mirror and know you did the right thing. Spare me the lecture. He put his phone away, stood up straight. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop this. You're going to stop measuring buildings, stop talking to inspectors, stop building whatever case you think you have. Or what? Or I'll make sure everyone knows you're suffering from cognitive decline, that you're paranoid and obsessive and unable to accept reality. I'll have Jennifer talk to your friends, your colleagues, your professional contacts. I'll make sure that anything you submit to the state board gets dismissed as the ravings of a mentally unstable former consultant who can't let go. I stared at him. That's your plan? Discredit me? It's not a plan. It's what Jennifer has already started doing. She's been laying groundwork for months, mentioning your memory lapses, your mood swings, your increasing anxiety about minor issues, all documented in conversations with family and friends. Memory lapses I don't have, mood swings that don't exist. Does it matter? By the time you try to go public with your accusations, everyone will already believe you're unstable, and your evidence will look like the conspiracy theories of someone who's lost touch with reality. He said it casually. Matter of fact, like he was describing a construction technique. This was my son. This was the person I'd raised, and he was calmly explaining how he'd gaslight me into irrelevance. When did this start? I asked. When did you decide I was the problem? When you wouldn't let me grow up. When you couldn't accept that I might have my own approach, my own standards. Alex's voice was tired now, defeated. I love you, Dad, but I can't let you ruin my life because you're too scared to trust me. I'm not scared to trust you. I'm looking at objective data that says your buildings have structural issues. Then we disagree on interpretation, and when professionals disagree, you document your concerns and move on. You don't launch a crusade. This isn't a crusade. This is professional responsibility. This is revenge. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. You're angry that I established boundaries, that I took the head seat at the table, that I didn't ask your permission to live my own life. So now you're weaponizing your professional credentials to punish me. Is that what you really think? It's what everyone will think. When this story gets out, and it will get out, the narrative won't be, concerned father reports safety issues. It'll be bitter father sabotages successful son. And you know I'm right. I did know. That's exactly how it would play, no matter how solid my evidence, no matter how legitimate my concerns. The story would be about family dysfunction and professional jealousy. I'm still submitting the review request, I said. Alex nodded slowly. Then I guess we're done here. Alex, no, we're done. You've made your choice. You're choosing buildings over your son, abstractions over family. Fine, that's your right. But don't pretend you're doing this for noble reasons. Don't pretend you're the hero here. He walked to his car, got in, sat there for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. Then he drove away. I stood there alone in the empty parking lot, morning light getting brighter, city waking up around me. I pulled out my phone and called Ellen. How did it go? She asked. He threatened to discredit me, said Jennifer's been laying groundwork for months, making me look unstable. I told you she was building a narrative. He also confirmed the problems are real. Didn't mean to, but he did. He's monitoring the 7th Street building, which means he knows it's still settling. So what now? Now I finish the report, submit it to the state board, and prepare for everything that comes after. The family will never forgive you. I know. Your father will side with Alex. I know. You'll lose everyone. Not everyone, I said. I still have you. Ellen was quiet for a long moment. Yes, you do. But you need to understand something. I'm not staying out of loyalty. I'm staying because what you're doing is right. But it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt so much you'll wonder if it was worth it. Will it be? I don't know. Ask me after the buildings don't collapse. She hung up. I got in my car and drove to a coffee shop, opened my laptop, started finalizing the report. By noon, I had a complete document, 37 pages, photographs, measurements, inspector statements, timeline analysis, professional language throughout, zero emotional content. The title, Structural Safety Concerns, Pattern Analysis of 5 Occupancy Approvals, 2022-2024. Author, Peter Donnelly, Licensed Structural Safety Consultant, 27 years experience. Subject, Construction Projects Managed by Alex Donnelly, Subject's Son. I attached the covering letter explaining the personal relationship, acknowledging the appearance of conflict, emphasizing that all data was objective and verifiable, requesting formal review. Then I saved it, didn't send it yet, sat there looking at the screen. This was the point of no return. Once I clicked send, everything changed, everything ended. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. Peter, I think there's been some miscommunication. Can we meet? Just you and me. No Alex, no family drama. I'd like to clear the air. I stared at the message. This was the other approach. Alex threatens. Jennifer sympathizes. Good cop, bad cop. Classic strategy. I texted back. When? Tonight? Dinner? My treat. I know a quiet place where we can talk privately. Okay. What time? 7. I'll text you the address. I put the phone down, looked at the report on my screen, looked at Jennifer's message. Ellen had said Jennifer was smart, that she knew something was coming. This was her chance to assess the threat, to figure out what I knew and how serious I was. Or maybe it was genuine. Maybe she really did want to clear the air, to find some middle ground. I didn't believe that for a second, but I texted back, see you at 7. Then I closed my laptop and spent the rest of the afternoon visiting the remaining buildings, taking more photographs, more measurements, building an even stronger case. My father hadn't just supported the distancing, he'd orchestrated it, 8 months ago, before I'd even raised concerns about Alex's projects. This wasn't a response to me being difficult. This was premeditated. Why? I asked. Why would he do that? I don't know, but I have a theory. Ellen sat down. I think your father sees Alex as his second chance, the son who'll build the legacy he wanted you to build, the ambitious one, the successful one, and you've been the obstacle to that vision. So he decided to remove the obstacle. He decided to make it clear that you're not the future. Alex is. And anyone who wants to be part of that future needs to get on board. I thought about my father, about our relationship, about 51 years of trying to earn his approval, trying to do things correctly, trying to be worthy. And he'd seen me as an obstacle. I need you to send me that audio file, I said. Why? Because when the reporter asks why I'm doing this, why I'm investigating my own son, I need to be able to explain the context. The family dynamics, the pressure to stay quiet and compliant. You'd use that recording publicly? If I have to show this isn't about professional jealousy. It's about a family that prioritized image over integrity, that chose ambition over safety. Ellen looked uncomfortable. That recording makes your father look calculated, manipulative. It could destroy his reputation too. Good. She stared at me. You want to destroy your father? I want people to understand why I'm doing this, why I couldn't just let it go, Why staying quiet wasn't an option. Peter, there's a line between protecting yourself and attacking everyone. They crossed that line 8 months ago. They planned this, orchestrated my humiliation, did it deliberately and systematically. I stood up. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm defending myself with the same tools they used against me. It doesn't feel like defense. It feels like escalation. Because that's what defense looks like when you've been backed into a corner. You either surrender or you fight back with everything you have. My laptop chimed. Email response from the reporter. Mr. Donnelly, your timing is interesting. I've been hearing rumors about construction safety concerns from some city inspectors. Would be very interested in talking. Can you meet tomorrow? Noon? I typed back. Yes. I'll bring all documentation. Sent it. Ellen watched me. You're all in now. No reservations. No hesitation. No, I'm done hesitating. What if you're wrong? What if the investigation finds no problems? What if Alex's buildings are safe? Then I'll have destroyed my family for nothing. But the investigation will still have happened. The questions will still have been asked. The standards will still have been examined. And you'll be the villain who cried wolf. Maybe. I closed the laptop. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think the buildings are compromised. I think the inspections were inadequate. I think systematic corners were cut. And I think if nothing's done, eventually something will fail. And if it does? Then at least I'll know I tried to prevent it instead of staying quiet to protect my family relationships. We sat in silence. Outside, a car passed. Normal neighborhood. Normal night. Inside, everything had changed. I'm scared, Ellen said quietly. Of what? Of what you're becoming. Of what this fight is doing to you. She looked at me. You're turning into someone I don't recognize, someone hard, someone willing to burn everything down. Is that so different from who I've always been? The careful consultant who documents everything? Who never lets anything slide? Yes, because before, you documented to protect. Now you're documenting to destroy. Those aren't opposites. Sometimes protection requires destruction. Sometimes you have to tear down the unsafe structure before you can build something better. And what are you building? I didn't have an answer for that. Ellen stood up. I'm going to bed. I'm tired. Tired of thinking about this. Tired of worrying about what happens next. I need sleep. She left. I sat there alone in the office, surrounded by files and documentation and evidence of structural failure. My phone was still off, but I knew when I turned it back on, there would be dozens of messages, voicemails, texts, emails, all of them angry, all of them accusing me of betrayal. I turned the phone on, 43 new messages. I didn't read any of them, just opened the recorder app and started documenting my thoughts, my observations, the timeline of events, everything that had happened and why, creating my own record, my own evidence. Because if this was going to end badly, I wanted the truth documented, wanted someone to be able to look back and understand why I made these choices, wanted to leave proof that I hadn't done this out of malice, even if that's exactly how it looked.